Hello, and welcome to the video. A lot has been said over the years about the Great Divide between the north and the south of England. However, an aspect of this Great Divide that is not often discussed is the role that the Midlands plays in this great national division. Of course, for anybody living inside the UK, there will be no need for me to explain the great north-south divide in England. However, for anybody watching outside England who may not be aware of the sociological tensions that lie within the country, I will now give a brief explanation of what the great north-south divide actually is. It is a fact widely acknowledged across all of England that Northerners are always angry, even when they're happy. In fact, especially when they're happy and having a good time. This all stems back to the late 7th century when Uthstan Grendelberg invaded the north of England from Portugal in an attack that strongly mirrored the style of Viking raids that would follow hundreds of years later. An event made all the more peculiar by the fact that Uthstan Grendelberg was a name that the Portuguese raider had given himself a full century before the first Viking raids actually took place. Coincidence alone. Otherwise, the alternative would be that Uthstan was somehow imbued with psychic abilities and could see into the future, whilst being so insecure about his own identity, he was willing to adopt the persona of a group of people who didn't even exist yet, and then to adopt one of their names, but get it terribly wrong. Still, Uthstan invaded the north of England, just like the Vikings. However, where Uthstan differed from the Vikings is that he was known just as well for his murderous pillage as he was for his acerbic sense of humor and great wit. And so, not only did he invade the north of England, but he mocked them relentlessly for their defeat. He purposefully went on a planned tour, traveling from town to town and telling them just how poorly they fought and how embarrassed they should be with themselves for losing. This insult was compounded all the more by the fact that all sources at the time agree Uthelstan was very, very funny in the jokes and remarks that he was making. The people of the north obviously had no way to react, having just lost the war, and so they had to stew in their own rages. King Uthelstan ruled their lands with a sarcastic contempt. Eventually, Uthstan left and went back to Portugal, but the people of the north, with no way to unleash their fury, remained angry, and they remain angry to this day. These southerners, not having suffered under Uthstan's brutal rule, maintained their light-hearted and cheery disposition, even mocking the northerners much in the manner of Uthelstan himself for how easily they had been invaded and conquered. But then England was invaded by the French, and so the southerners had egg all over their faces and were served up a huge slice of humble pie, which they still refuse to eat to this day. And so that set the scene for the centuries of strife and trouble that would follow. The Northerners angered at having been invaded by a proto-Viking, and the Southerners humiliated at having become French. Two sides that couldn't possibly see eye to eye or cohabit alongside together. The outcome would simply have been a massacre. This was widely understood by the rulers of the various kingdoms that made up the country at that time. And so, in order to avoid the inevitable bloodshed that would ensue, it was decided to set up the Midlands, an area of land in the middle of England designed to be a buffer zone between the north and the south. Now, you may be thinking, well, if the Northerners are always so very angry and Southerners are always spoiling for a fight, then what's to stop them from attacking the people of the Midlands? And if that is the case, then you would make an excellent monarch, because that's exactly what the kings were thinking at that time. And so they devised a clever plan to avoid the inevitable catastrophe. The idea was to create a group of people with an accent that sounded so stupid it seemed as if you could not only talk them out of their shirt on their back, but out of their socks and their shoes and anything else they had them on them as well, forcing them to walk home naked in the rain, and still, somehow, they would be too stupid to realize they had been robbed. So much so that the idea of attacking for no reason people who seemed, or at least sounded, to be so moronically stupid would be a step too far for both Northerners and Southerners alike. So the various kings of the time went about their various kingdoms, finding all the people they could who talked in a stupid manner and sounded like an idiot whenever they spoke. They put them all together in the middle of England and forced them to form what we now know as the Midlands. And all of their silly voices and stupid way of talking all melded together and formed the famous Midlands accent. Of course, nowadays, and even at the time itself, it was understood that the formation of the Midlands was a terrible mistake, and it is speculated that cities such as Birmingham, Wolverhampton, and Coventry may have held back the Industrial Revolution just by sounding so very stupid. But as the history books will tell us, the strategy proved to be effective. And not only that, it worked. There was no great massacre or bloodshed. The Northerners still hated the Southerners, and both sides wanted to hate the Midlanders as well. But the Midlanders sounded so very stupid that all they could do was find them funny. The Northerners and the Southerners mocked and ridiculed the people of the Midlands, and they still do, to this day. However, they never went to war with them. And the reason is, as we all know, because it's hard to start a fight when you're laughing so hard you're gasping for air. And so that's the story of how, where, when, and why the Midlands came to be formed, and indeed the role it played in helping to stabilize England when the Northerners and the Southerners had dropped the ball so very badly. It's a statistical fact that more people drown in the Midlands than in coastal regions of the UK, despite the fact that they're completely surrounded by land and miles away from the nearest large body of water. Still, somehow, they managed to rack up shockingly high numbers. Famously known for being very low-lying land with no mountains, every summer hundreds of Midlanders are found dead from exposure at the top of really very gentle hills. There has never once been one single hurricane in the Midlands, and yet still somehow 60 Midlanders have died in hurricanes. Hurricanes. That's plural. They say there's no accounting for stupidity. And in the Midlands, that really is the case. They only had one bank, but it confused them, and they didn't understand it. So they gave it to France. The French were able to negotiate with the Midlanders, of course, because To the French, the Midland accent doesn't sound any sillier than the accents in the rest of England, or indeed as the French accent sounds to us. Well, I would say that's about the end of the video, but in truth, the video ended some time back, around the time that I said, so that's the story of how, why, where, and when the Midlands came to be formed. Ever since then, I've just been rambling, to be honest with you. So if you're a northerner or indeed a southerner and have taken exception to the way that I have portrayed you in this video, may I suggest you go and have a look at a history book, and you'll find out that everything I said is exactly as it happened. And if you're a Midlander, well, then I'm just impressed you've been able to concentrate for this long. But I'll defy you to be able to write anything legible in the comments. And so that's the end of the video. It has to end somewhere, and it's here. Still, another thing about the Midlanders. Hello, and welcome to the end of the video. Now I know that every other channel pitifully grovels and begs for you to like and subscribe, but you'll be glad to know that here on this channel we don't stoop to any such pathetic nonsense. Please like and subscribe.